A map to not going home. Piggly Wiggly. The truck. The pace on the beach slows down in the warm stupor after lunch. The perfect time of day for Brolin's pair of little troopers to go to work. Brolin wrinkled his face as he picked at a stray thread on his shiny jogging suit, unraveling it from the gold chain around his neck. From a radio in the background, a woman's voice droned out yet another commentary on President Clinton's impeachment hearings. Rachel and Sharky should be here soon, he said under his breath as he surveyed the parking lot through the peephole in the wall of the large straight truck he lived in, parked in a strategic triangulation bounded by 3 surf shops. Southwest in the direction of Doheny State Beach, he saw Oliver standing by his valet booth at the Marina restaurant nod his head toward Clyde, who potato-ed by on his Harley with the sidecar. 2 different neighbors busy with 2 different scams. A police helicopter flew over. It wasn't hovering over their neighborhood. It was flying larger loops centered on downtown Los Angeles, so Brolin wasn't alarmed. The electric toaster oven in the corner crackled with the change of temperature, and the aroma of sausage patties began to overtake the atmosphere. Crisp brown patties for 3 would be done in 20 minutes, but he'd wait for his little crew to arrive to start the pancakes. Lunchtime breakfasts were their daily tactical meetings, and he liked Rachel and Sharky to be distracted waiting for food when he debriefed them. Through the dim window of the toaster oven, it was difficult to see the pork sausages browning, Rachel's favorite. The patty sizzled as he made space at the table by moving yesterday's haul of sunglasses and designer beach jackets, placing a faux leather windbreaker on top. Rachel had brought in a Gucci purse yesterday, but Brolin shipped it quickly after he checked to be certain Rachel dumped any identification. The inventory was primarily a stack of jackets, light ones due to the climate here, and tracksuit tops and some bottoms. Most of them were women's clothes because more women brought their kids to the beach. Rachel called it their shopping days. Rachel. Rachel knocked her knock on the side of the truck. Tap, 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 tap. And a moment later, she crawled in through the hatch from the truck's cab. It was an easy maneuver for her because she was so tiny at 4 feet 6 and 90 pounds. She had come to this country from Vietnam at 6 years old with her mother, so her English was good but accented. She adopted the American name, Rachel, but pronounced it Rayul. Her mother died 3 years before and left her on her own. At 15 now, she was rightfully distrustful of everyone. Brolin looked up as Rachel tossed 2 pairs of sandals toward him. They clattered a good 5 feet away from him. No one ever taught her how to throw things. She looked more like someone casting a spell. "You smell good in here," she said. "Let's eat." He had already poured out circles of pancake mix on the hot plate. "Hold on. You know what's first." "Okay." I slept in the ventilation shaft again. They fed me behind the restaurant. And I didn't get in no trouble. I got those sandals on the way in. Rachel's health had improved this past year. Brolin smiled to himself, but cut it off before she could see it. He flipped pancakes onto the plate with sausage and pushed them across the table. "It's not right I take all the risks," she said. "Sharky just runs up and down the beach shouting, and that's what he likes to do anyway. He's squirrel brains, he is. I should get better than him." She had sung this song before. She just wanted attention, so Brolin added the remaining sausage onto her plate and said, "Sharky will have to make do with pancakes." Rachel looked feral. She ate with a fork in each hand and had the syrup on the side, dipping fork tines into the syrup and tasting it between bites. "Take that jacket when we leave." "I know you like leather stuff," he said. Leaning forward with a smile, Rachel sniffed a piece of pork patty on a fork. They got a famous place in Tennessee called Piggly Wiggly. Piggly Wiggly. Rachel existed right at the borderline between cynicism and pragmatism, all of it sealed under a layer of nostalgia too thick for someone of her young age. A year ago, and a week prior to being recruited by Brolin, Rachel walked by the offices of Dr. Browning DDS on the day they set out their old magazines. It was 6 months after her mother died and a week before she was recruited by Brolin. The magazines were stacked atop a rolling trash bin. She took them all because she read things, and glossy pictures took her to better worlds. Later that night, she curled up to read stories, hoping they would distract her from the gnawing hunger in her stomach. Decades ago, the Marina restaurant had been an industrial building producing fiberglass boat hulls. The building had a huge exhaust system to vent epoxy fumes, and the restaurant closed off the ventilation shaft. The abandoned shaft would have been small for a subway tunnel, but it was huge compared to normal ductwork. It was as close to a home as Rachel had. When she turned to a page in home life, she saw two things. The page on the right was the history of Piggly Wiggly grocery stores, but on the left was a glossy photo ad for Jimmy Dean sausage. Glistening crisp brown sausage patties sizzled on the side. Before she died, her mother would carefully open a tube of sausage and cook bits in rice. Land shrimp she would call the brown bits, as she would carefully wrap the edges of the sausage tube back in place and refrigerate it for later. She missed her mother greatly, her gentle explanations and careful ways. "I'm gonna find you one day," she promised both the picture of the Piggly Wiggly historical marker in Memphis, Tennessee, and the breakfast plate next to it. She pressed a hand on the rumble in her midsection. In the corner of the sausage ad, the smiling face of a man with lots of shiny black hair beamed out at her, and "You too, Mr. Dean." She pinned the pages on the wall of the ventilator shaft in which she lived. And there she was at Brolin's a year later, and she was eating her sausage, and Sharky's sausage too. Brolin. Brolin's only living sibling was a brother off in prison for at least another 18 years, a brother who lived vicariously through rare exchanges of letters. Brolin threw a letter from his brother to the floor. "I don't feel like reading drivel from Sharky's father right now. I don't care if people don't like me. It's easier. I used to care." Rachel sat up straight. She knew this mood. "You know what? The things you regret are going to be like real things when you're dead. Things you can touch. Things like being an old crab around me." Brolin squared up in front of her and smiled from the side of his mouth. "I'm not a crab. You know I look out for you." She whispered in his ear. He smiled and shook his head. The beach. Sharky showed up. Tap, 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 tap. He came in like one of those miniature tornadoes from the desert people call dust devils. That day they would work their home beach, but first Brolin brushed dust off the leather jacket and handed it to Rachel. Lost for a moment in far-off thoughts, he smiled watching Rachel as she looked closely at every stitch in the seams of the faux leather jacket before she put it on. Sharky pushed pancake pieces around with his fork. "Eat up," Brolin said. "We haven't got all day." Rachel walked around between them and leaned against the table until Sharky could finish his pancakes. It was one of those perfect days. The water had changed with the angle of the sun from steel to turquoise. Umbrellas and towels were seated across the sands, with bundles and books that may or may not be read, and assorted paraphernalia. Ongoing naps were serious, and a pelican skimmed the surface of the water. In the distance, a volleyball game was in progress. But everything was imbued with the overhanging feeling that nothing needed to happen. And relaxed meant lax, meant purses, wallets, jewelry. Even the occasional iPod or laptop rested carelessly on beach towels. They were working their home beach that day. Brolin said, "Look at that. Look at the way everybody's dressed," he said. Supernatural is a redundant word, don't you think? Nature is already super. People dress for fashion, not sense, Rachel said. They dressed all bright. They need that on dark days, so cars don't hit them. They don't need bright clothes today. Looking at her, Brolin inhaled slowly as he smiled. "The beauty of the world moves me profoundly some days, especially when opportunity knocks." He winked. Chapter 2. Shark. Rachel looked straight at Brolin and crossed her eyes just as Sharky returned from the edge of the water. He loved running. "Look," Sharky said. "You can see dolphins kicking up sand." As he came to a halt blocking their path, the little silver ladybug icon on the necklace He had lifted weeks earlier swung over his shoulder from the momentum. He flipped it back in place. Sharky was, as always, excited. Others might tag him ADHD. His childishness might be brainlessness and a liability. But to Brolin, Sharky had a talent. It was a bonus his voice was shaky and sounded like a frightened child, perfect for raising alarm in nervous mothers. They went to work. Shark. Heads turned. Prone men pushed up to see what the 9-year-old boy was panicking over. Supine women sat up holding hats in place and scanning the horizon for the whereabouts of their whelps wading out in the water. Shark. Sharky was waving his left arm and gesturing toward the water with the other. Shark. The advantage of facing away from the water while he raised the alarm was that Sharky saw which beachgoers were abandoning their beach goods, and his waving arm was a semaphore system for Rachel, who was already swooping in toward the promising sights he signaled. Her camouflage was speed and smallness. Officer Decais. Officer Decais walked out of the locker room. His equipment was all squeaky new. The badge, shoes, and especially the creaking leather of his utility belt gleamed. The experienced officers around him were covered in shiny gear too, but his was conspicuous, as if their equipment was coated with glossy histories of adventures and victories. These vets would judge him this first week. His beat was foot patrol. The senior partner would walk up coast along the marina. He would trek down coast along Doheny Beach. He was tall and slim with a long nose and thick black hair. He moved probably 200 yards along the beach, walking at an easy pace. Sunbathers lounging around him could not know he had been a college decathlon winner. The sand warmed his shoes, but it was packed down sufficiently to prevent his feet from sinking into it. That was a blessing, because little sand worked into his shoes to torture him. Someone shouted "Shark," and that was when he noticed the one small person running away from the water. Not toward it, a small person loaded down with bags and bundles. The pursuit. Decais found his rhythm immediately, even though his equipment distracted him. He was certain he would outpace the small figure on the far side of the beach. With his right hand clamped over his baton to minimize the utility belt's effect on his balance, he knew it would look good to run down what appeared to be someone taking advantage of a disturbance on the beach to pull off a grab-and-run crime of opportunity. This first week on the job was an important time to establish himself. His breathing fell into a familiar pattern. Rachel darted across the divided highway toward her drop-off points. At the amphitheater, she tossed half her load into the bleacher box, freeing up her hands enough so that she could rifle through the 2 purses for cash as she ran, before she dumped the rest. Still, Decais was gaining ground fast. The sand under the running officer made for difficult traction, but she knew he would close with her quickly once he made it to the pavement. Everything else except the cash she would ditch at Dana Point Arches. What the? Rachel felt a tinge of panic when she saw how much ground the officer gained after he made it to the hard surface of Dana Point Harbor Drive. She was fast to be so small, but this guy moved like a machine. Normally, she would put cash into the box under the walkway. Brolin never had a way to know about the small percentages she usually withheld from the last drop point, but with that guy behind her. She deleted that stop on her itinerary and headed straight for the ventilation shaft. Rachel saw Decais catch sight of Sharky. Another person running from the beach was suspicious, but Decais would only be able to pursue one of them. He stayed on her trail. A well-dressed couple was accepting the keys from the valet, Oliver, when Oliver saw Rachel coming. He could tell something was off. Usually, Rachel was inconspicuous and took an indirect path to the back of the restaurant where the old ventilator shaft was located. He watched her running full tilt. Racing past the restaurant, Rachel disappeared to the left just before Officer Decais appeared. Standing at his valet booth, the look on Oliver's face was that of a collaborator, but his hand pointing to the right was that of a saboteur. Decais followed Oliver's misdirection to the right. Chapter 3. Sandcastle. Decais asked around. He decided Rachel was a runaway, probably the other kid too. At first, He wanted to impress the veteran cops by making the arrest. Exhaling slowly, their kids, he knew the child care system would be the right thing to, so he stopped by CWS, Child Welfare Services. I'm telling you, he said to caseworker Mary, with black hair sporting a white blaze down the middle, it was like a hallucination, baby gangsters running all over the beach. Rachel did not know where Sharky was. The restaurant was no longer safe, but she had to stay around in case he showed up. Then Clyde potatoed up on his Harley with the sidecar. I saw what happened, Clyde said as he threw a flexible leather helmet and a pair of oversized goggles to Rachel. Nobody will recognize you with these on, and I'll take you down in the direction of Capistrano. Sharky's already there. He's worried sick about you. An hour later, they were south near Posh Cove, far enough away to feel safe. She could tell Sharky was still in shock. Shush, nothing's going to happen, she said. Come here, little nutbrains. She snuggled him to her. He was warm and smelled like milk. When you were a little baby, everybody looks like good guys or bad guys. Grow up and there are good guys who go bad and bad guys who go good, so it's hard to tell about people. They're none of them all one thing or another, but they're people. Sharky seemed more confused. Look, she knew what she wanted to say, but she wasn't certain how to get there. I saw this nest of house swallows with babies in it. Starlings came and raided it, and the babies all landed on the ground. Some flopped around trying to fly, and the starlings gobbled them up for lunch. Sharky recoiled. Is that us? Did the ones who didn't try to fly get away, he said. No, they didn't. They turned around and pressed their heads against a wall so they couldn't see anything. They just got ate last. I don't want to get eaten, he said with big eyes. What I mean is the ones who didn't do nothing got a minute more, but they never had a chance to get away. The other ones who tried to fly had a chance. That's the best we can do, flop around trying to fly because that's the only chance we got. They breathed in silence for a while, alert but together until Sharky broke the spell. He started walking around poking a finger like punctuation, with that smirk people get when they are later telling themselves that's what I should have said. When I was running away, you know what I thought about? Sharky said. What? We were running in different directions, and I looked over at the water and thought about Hawaii. We got the waves on our beach, but Hawaii has waves too, so the waves run in different directions. So where do the waves turn around to get to Hawaii? They just go in different directions, she said. Somewhere they start, and then they just go in different directions, I guess. She thought about what she said and realized that would mean there was a place in the ocean the waves come from, and that would be a calm place without any waves. The ocean must have a ventilator shaft. Sharky would have been satisfied with any answer, she knew that, but she felt like she needed more. Out of the blue, Sharky said, let's build a sandcastle. Rachel knew the lady would come again. I have to leave. She'll take both of us if she catches us. She knew they'd end up in some foster care arrangement. I won't be able to take Sharky with me. Today, she'd help him build his sandcastle. The sandcastle was the size of a kiddie pool, with walls around a castle with turrets. An architectural achievement. Sharky had used a number 10 coffee can from the trash receptacle and brought Rachel an oversized plastic cup. Afterward, Rachel sat with her feet in one of the holes from which they had excavated building materials. A sneaker wave spilled in water around her feet, and although the other waves did not come so far up the beach, the tide was coming in. The ocean would eat Sharky's castle. Their castle. Come sit here, castle builder. She patted the sand next to the hole. Poking his punctuation finger at the water around her feet, he chanted, "Get out water, get out water." Rachel said, "Look," and she drew Sharky's name on the water. Dragging his punctuation finger in the water, he wrote Rackle in an approximated spelling of Rachel. "We'll never run out of ink," he said. She spelled out Own. "That's my Vietnam name. It sounds like one. One Chan, and she drew that on the water too, Quan. We can always live inside the moment of the memories we have. I do it all the time." Sharky didn't respond. He silently formed words with his lips, her name. She continued, "You can always come to the water and write things to me." Sharky looked off toward the horizon, silent for a moment more. He knew something, but he didn't know what. Without turning toward her, he said, "If it's a really clear day, and I got up high somewhere, do you think I could see where the waves turn to go to Hawaii?" Before she could finish saying he might see waves go in any direction, another sneaker wave splashed in, and Sharky realized what was going to happen to their sandcastle. He threw his body down in front of the sandcastle to protect it. Then he yelled and ran into the water, slapping it. "Go back, go back." When he exhausted himself, Rachel stood and whispered in his ear, "Always remember this minute, because when you think of me in your head, that will really be me. You can talk to me and ask me things, and I will be there for you." He handed her the ladybug necklace from around his neck. "Have this," he said, as they walked off toward Doheny Beach. They could not know the tide behind them turned and began to ebb. Remnants of their castle remained recognizable. "Come on," she said, "let's go find some food."